anything is Pospisil. Martin Pospíšil is coming back to the Calgary Flames for the first time this season, but the injury bug claims a key Flames prospect. Another reason why it is challenging to think any rebuild method is a sure thing.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On Flames, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Health news, Martin Pospíšil is back for the Calgary Flames, but Cullen Potter is injured, season-ending injury with the Arizona State Sun Devils. We'll talk about that as well as preview the Wednesday game between Pittsburgh and Calgary with Locked On Penguins host Hunter Hodies, and Blake Coleman injury news as well, plus more trade rumors as the Flames season rolls into the later stages of January. My name is Ryan G. I'm a lifelong podcast host, but also a play-by-play broadcaster, certainly for decades plus. Based in the Pacific Northwest, and a Flames fan since Peter Marr got me into the Sea of Red back in the 2004 Stanley Cup final run, the legendary Hall of Fame broadcaster for your Calgary Flames. This health news, ups and downs of exactly what being a sports fan often feels like. You have something that takes the team steps forward, and then you have a few steps back with both the addition of Martin Pospíšil back to the Flames roster after time with the Wranglers in the AHL, and then Cullen Potter, Arizona State prospect for Calgary, is injured and will not play again this season. Let's start with the good news, if you will. Martin Pospíšil, yet to play this year, was injured in October prior to the start of the regular season, but he has been recalled. 26 years old, he was on a loan with the Wranglers for a conditioning stint, and exciting to have someone like him back. There's a lot of optimism about what he can bring back to this club, especially considering how good he was in spots over his first 2 years with the Calgary Flames. Last summer, he was named to Slovakia's initial Olympic roster. He is set to play coming up next month. And so excited to see what he can do back from an injury. The specifics of his injury is not really as important as getting him back into, playing to exactly the capability that he is able to play. And you had Dryden Hunt go back to the Wranglers in the roster move to facilitate Pospisil getting up to the big club. And the good news is Pospisil feels like he's able to play at the same with the same type of play that he's brought to Calgary in his prior 2 years with the team. He shared such with NHL Flames on X.
For me, it's hard to change something, when I step on the ice, I think I'm a different person, and it just is inside of me, when you have passion to the sport, and especially hockey, it's contact sport, physical, and we want to win every game, and you want to help, and I think when I play physical and making space for my teammates and playing fast, that's what makes the team better. It's pretty emotional for me, and it's just I just want to looking forward, and there were some really tough days that I've been through, and I'm happy that it's all gone.
144 games already for Pospisil, and my favorite stat of his is plus 17 in the plus minus category. Granted, a lot of that plus 17 came in his debut season back in 2023-24. Also, though, the exchange on that is far less penalty minutes a year ago compared to that initial season 2 seasons ago. He had plus 14 back in 2023-24, but 109 penalty minutes in only 63 games, whereas Pospisil played almost the entire season a year ago and had far less penalty minutes, but just a plus 3 as well. And the line of Ryan Lomberg, Adam Klapka, and Pospisil could be a little bit of a boost for Calgary to try to get a little bit more scoring from what has primarily been that fourth line this year. And that's even, I think, an unfair way to frame it, considering the fact that Ryan Lomberg, by and large, has been fairly solid for the Calgary Flames this year. I don't think there's a lot of disappointment around the way that Lomberg has performed this season. Everything could always be a little bit better, but certainly when Calgary has been able to get some production from him, Klapka's had some moments this season where he's been one of the most noticeable people on the ice for the right reasons. I mean, it's more so the critiques get sent the direction of the Huberdeau line in so many ways, especially after Monday's loss to the Devils, where Joel Farabee arguably had the best chance for Calgary to not even let that game get into overtime in the third period. So I think it's going to be exciting to have Pospisil back in the mix, and it's certainly the case for his head coach, Ryan Huska. He likes what prospects that line has now that Martin will be back on the ice. He told that to NHL Flames on X.
My belief is he only knows one way to play. I think we've seen that throughout his career. But you do wonder if he's going to be a little bit different in certain situations. My gut says that he's going to be the same old 76 that we've seen. I like having a harder group of guys that you can throw on the ice that have the ability to impact or change the momentum of a game. And those guys have that. Number one, they're all physical players. Number two, they can all play. And I think that helps in today's day and age where you can't just throw guys on the ice that can't impact a game with the puck, right? And Adam has shown that he's got better hands than most people give him credit for. Ryan Lomberg's got the sneaky speed, and Pospisil is very direct with how he goes to the net.
Coach Huska is saying they can all play, and that's one of those, well, Coach, I hope so moments, but I like how he got into the specifics of the things that they bring to the team. And that's one thing I appreciate about Ryan is he feels like a solid communicator, especially the way he addresses things in post-game press conferences, because he's not shy about mentioning how he needs more from certain players too. Especially recently we heard in the conversation with Rasmus Andersson, some of the things that Calgary needed from some of the pieces around Rasmus too. So excited to see Martin Pospíšil back on the ice. However, there's that rebuild conversation around a lot of the great prospects that Calgary has. Cullen Potter is one of them, and announced that he is out for the season with the Arizona Sun Devils. This was recently shared with his head coach, Greg Powers. You have Arizona State student, reporter, multimedia journalist Gabriella Chernoff sharing on X that the press conference audio or press conference video with Coach Powers saying he's out for the year, unfortunately requires surgery, and he's going to get that Thursday, probably looking at a 3 to 4 month recovery process. We collectively felt like this was the best course of action for him and his future. He added that Potter will make a full recovery. It's nothing that's threatening, and he'll be, or he said it won't be to the point where he wouldn't be flying around when he's healthy. So the latter part of that certainly is good news. It's not something that's going to affect Potter, full stop, but he's already accumulated 48 points in 59 games with the Sun Devils. And this is part of that conversation about getting Calgary young talent to be able to burst back onto the scene, especially if Calgary continues to try to make trades like they did for Andersson on Sunday to accumulate more draft capital, and possibly even players like Zach Whitecloud, who both could be a contributor to Calgary as well as possible another trade piece for the Flames. But this is my caution with any rebuild, is it feels like in the absence of seeing the results on the ice, and this is not exclusive to hockey. If you see rebuilds where players get traded away in football, for example, the whole point of draft picks is to try to find oftentimes the version of the player that you trade to acquire the draft picks anyway. I feel like hockey, oftentimes young players can have a bigger impact earlier, and I think that's more of a consistent thing, especially from those generational talents like a Macklin Celebrini. So I do acknowledge that having younger players step in sooner rather than later seems to have a little bit more of a success rate with hockey than it does in some other sports like football. But that said, if Potter were to be injured tomorrow, if any of these players that Calgary is banking on are unable to play, then it just changes the trajectory of your build anyway. And so I think coaching, athletic training, conditioning has such an impact, more so sometimes than the players that are being selected. And I'm excited. It's really good news that Coach Powers shared that Potter will likely not have a long-term impact because of the injury. But at the same time, just if you get your hopes up, you never know what's around the other side. And I encourage all of us as the Flames try to get back into being a genuine title contender, genuine Western Conference championship type caliber team that they were even, 3 years ago, at least through a awesome regular season 4 years ago at this point. I hope that we just kind of keep that in mind, that at any point, anything can change, certainly. It starts again tonight, Wednesday. Pittsburgh, Calgary on the ice at Scotiabank Saddledome. We'll talk to Locked On Penguins host Hunter Hodies when we return on this edition of Locked On Flames. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what we needed, because real experience matters, and we want to avoid some of that resume buzzword jargon. Instead of struggling to try to get your job seen, make sure you use Indeed sponsored jobs. It helps your listing stand out. You reach quality candidates faster. And according to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support the show by saying you heard Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for making Locked On Flames your first listen every single day, as we have a chance to talk to Hunter Hodies, the host of Locked On Penguins, as Calgary and Pittsburgh get set to tangle up on Wednesday night. Hunter, appreciate you taking the time. This is an interesting thing because the Penguins, for all intent and purposes, was the team that I was most afraid of on Calgary's big road trip recently, and all of a sudden Calgary goes in there and plays arguably their best game of the road trip. I'm curious what your takeaways were from the first meeting between these two teams.
Yeah, I just felt like it was a bit sloppy. Felt like the Penguins were kind of handling the puck like a grenade for a lot of it. It wasn't what I was watching during their 6-game winning streak, because the Flames were able to snap that winning streak. I like the way the Penguins were able to at least battle back to tie it. But, Ryan Shea giveaway leads to a goal. The other goal is just a really nice shot. Pashilov's really not much he can do there on Matt Coronado. And the rest of the game, the Penguins were chasing it. But, Devin Cooley was also really good in that game. I thought he made a lot of really big saves, especially during the 6-on-5 late in the game. But I still felt like the Penguins, that wasn't close to their A game. So I think they're going to want to try to reverse that here. There's 2 big points that are up on the table, for this one. The Penguins are in 3rd place in the Metro, 3 points up on the Caps. They were tied with the Islanders for a little bit until the Islanders went into Vancouver and beat them on Tuesday night. But yeah, I just felt like the Penguins, it was JV in some spots in that game against Calgary. I didn't like part of their effort against them.
This is a team that you were telling me you were excited the fact that they're in this thing, right? You mentioned where they are in the standings. What do you think this team needs to do kind of pre-Olympic break to make sure they solidify that momentum, or at least the up and to the right kind of direction that they put together?
Yeah, I really just think they need to beat the teams that, I guess, in a way they're supposed to beat, that are lower than them in the standings. Obviously not trying to disrespect the Flames here. That was a very nice victory over the Penguins in Pittsburgh. Very low scoring game, but I still think the Penguins need to go into that game on Wednesday, going for the 2 points. I know, breaking news for me saying that, but honestly, like the rest of the road trip too, like Vancouver, they're on an 11-game losing streak. They look like the worst team in the league. They're in the race for Gavin McKenna. You got to win that game. The Edmonton game, I almost chalk out to a scheduled loss because the second half of a back-to-back in Edmonton against Connor McDavid, and this team always plays really poorly against him, especially these last few years. So I'm not really looking for much out of that game. But if you can go 3-1 on this road trip, they beat Seattle on Monday 6-3. You're looking pretty good going into the final 2 games of January against also Chicago and the Rangers, both teams who are also not very good this year. And then in February, you have 3 really good big games as well. Ottawa, who they struggled against, but they're still lower in the standings. And then Buffalo, and then the Islanders. That Islanders game is a 4-point swing for whoever wins in regulation, if the game does end in regulation. So again, the biggest key for me is winning these games against teams that are lower than you in the standings, trying to bank these points when you can, because March is going to be hell on earth. Like, you're playing basically every other day. You're playing a lot of these top contenders in March. It's going to be really tough. So the Penguins have to bank the points when they can.
You mentioned Devin Cooley, how well he played against the Penguins out in Pennsylvania. And that's one thing that Flames fans feel pretty good about, is their situation in net with Dustin Wolf and Devin Cooley with a 2-year contract extension. I've heard you describe the Penguin situation maybe as a little more unsettled. Is that fair when you look at the goalie situation?
A little uncertain. They still have to decide what they want to do with Archer Shelovs. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Stuart Skinner is also a free agent. I don't foresee him coming back as of right now, but if he keeps playing well, maybe Kyle Dubas signs him to a 1 or 2 year contract and maybe pairs him with Sergei Murashov. That's another thing. Ryan, the Penguins have a very young and upcoming goalie from Wilkes-Barre who is almost NHL ready. He's had a couple of brief stints in the NHL this year, and you can see the talent is very much on display. Couple other times where it's like, okay, could use a little bit more seasoning, and he's been doing very well in Wilkes-Barre this year, which is what I've wanted him to do. Like, you want to see a player like this really dominate down there, and then once the season is over, you can really see if he can make this team out of camp be at least the backup to whoever is the starter for next year. Maybe it's a 1B situation, for example. But that's the thing. Like, they're really waiting on him. Yoel Blomqvist is the same. He's playing also very well in Wilkes-Barre. So they have a lot of decisions to make there. I think you might see one of Shelovs or Skinner back for next year. If I had to pick one right now, I would go Shelovs and then probably Murashov. But Blomqvist is also there too. But a lot of uncertainty with that position right now. That's for sure.
It's nice, I'm going to be honest with you, Hunter, just to have one thing that feels good about the Flames right now, and that is the goaltending situation, not having to go through that. We speak a lot about the Everydayer Club with Locked On, and I think as a newer host in a chair for a Locked On show, I think would be worth letting people get to know you as well, because when you're a member of Everydayer Club and in All Access and on our Discord, you're interacting with not just Locked On Flames, but all the hosts across the Locked On Podcast Network. Describe how you got into the Penguins in that hosting chair and some of your background.
Yeah, so I've been following this team for 20 plus years now, ever since I was a little kid. My mom grew up with this team in Pittsburgh. Her favorite player was Paul Coffey. So once, I saw her be a diehard fan, I kind of figured I was going to be next in line. And sure enough, I was. I applied for this gig back in, fall of 2019, senior year of college. And I just thought, you know what? I don't have a lot of experience. I'm just going to go for it. And I was able to get the gig. I've been doing it ever since. I added Patrick Damp as a co-host a few years ago, and he's been doing great in the co-host chair. We're going to record our show after this. And, we always try to provide our best analysis whenever we can. We try to be as objective as possible on the show. But, of course, deep down, we are both fans of the team. So, of course, we're going to be a little bit biased, but we still pride ourselves on being as objective as possible when it comes to this team. So it's a lot of fun doing this, and especially this season. Last couple of seasons, we obviously love doing the show, but the team has not really been fun to watch. This year, it's been such a breath of fresh air with the new coaching staff. The players are having fun. They're in the playoff race. Playoff hockey brings so many more views to each show. So Pat and I are really hoping that the Penguins can sneak in this year, because playoffs, there's nothing like it. Like, everyone comes and flocks to your channel. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, that's really some of the story for how I got involved.
Awesome. Well, Hunter, thank you so much for giving us some insight into Pittsburgh, that game coming up on Wednesday. And of course, those who are listening to any of these Locked On shows, check out the Everydayer Club. We'd love to see you in there interacting with us on the Discord channel. Appreciate your time.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day. During the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get into the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets you like most. Every play feels bigger. The boosts make your bets feel that way too, and it gives you more on the bets that you already like too, instead of making you have to lean into something new. So whether you're feeling like you want to back a team that's riding momentum, maybe there's some quarterback play, like the Denver Broncos having to use their backup quarterback in the upcoming AFC Championship. Maybe you're betting on that and you want a chance to have your payout be even bigger. That's exactly what happens. You make those picks, apply the profit boosts, and you go after even bigger payouts as the playoffs continue. So visit FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Pittsburgh and Calgary on Wednesday. We'll review that coming up on the next edition of Locked On Flames to kind of set the table for the upcoming weekend against Washington. Anaheim is also a critical game at Scotiabank Saddledome. And you look at this stretch of play that's coming up to end January before the Olympic break. Boy, would it be nice to have Blake Coleman back. And it sounds like that might be the case. Earlier this week, he was seen in Monday's morning skates, although he was wearing the yellow non-contact jersey, according to Pat Steinberg on X, Fan960 Steinberg on X, saying taking the morning skate in a non-contact jersey, missed the last 4 games with an upper body injury. It sounds like he's likely going to play sooner rather than later. I didn't get the impression, granted this was from Monday, that he'd be back in the lineup on Wednesday. However, when we get into Thursday's show and recap what happened with Coleman, it'd be nice to see if that was the case. He was put on to injured reserve back on January 13th. Hasn't played, I believe, since the Boston game in the later stages of that home or that road, the very beginning of that road stretch on January 8th. And so it was a little bothersome too, because Ryan Huska had said that Blake was more precautionary, I suppose. I think after that game, the quote was something along the lines of he was just a little bit sore. And so there's that. But at the same time, too, Coleman's still being brought up in trade rumors recently on TSN Insider Trading. On the January 20th episode, Pierre LeBrun said about the Calgary Flames, they're quite ready to keep Blake Coleman. He's an important leader in that dressing room, but they can't say that 100% because there might be just an offer that puts it over the top, given the interest that there is on the market where they can't say no. And so I take that to pair up with my feeling, which is that the Flames likely have an incentive to keep Coleman because of the leadership he provides. You already lose Rasmus Andersson, Coleman's not as long tenured as Rasmus was, but certainly one of those leadership guys in the locker room. And even if you were to go out of the gate in 2026-27 with Cole Reshny and younger players, William Stromgren is on the ice, Samuel Honzak is back as well. You have some of these younger pieces that are supposed to be part of this rebuild. You still need to have that leadership piece. And Coleman is coveted for the same reason in the trade market. So the good news for Flames fans, you still have a good amount of time until a trade deadline. And Coleman's value to a franchise that wants that leadership and somebody who has a lot of familiarity deep into the playoffs, that value just keeps going up, especially if Blake Coleman gets back on the ice and was playing at the level that he was, leading the way for Calgary offensively in the later stages of November into December. And still right now, with 13 goals, is somebody who leads the team in terms of that goal mark. So that value is still going to be there for Blake Coleman. Calgary has kind of the luxury to either incorporate him into the leadership piece that's needed with the younger players getting a lot more ice time next season, or maximize his trade value coming back. I don't see really a loss in this scenario, but either way, it'll be nice to have Blake back on the ice sooner than later. In that same conversation, Nazem Kadri was mentioned again as a trade piece, and it continues to be one of the biggest sticking points to Kadri being traded is contractual compared to the likes of what Rasmus Andersson was. And Toronto continues to be mentioned with Kadri as well. So we'll see if that ends up being a reality, but I wanted to focus more on Coleman to close out this episode of Locked On Flames. We invite you to follow the podcast and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We continue to trek towards 700 subscribers. Thank you to everybody who has done that, and it really helps when you share any of the content that you see with Locked On Flames. So please continue to do that, and we're excited to kind of ramp up more with our social media and ways that you can connect with us as well in the coming months. In fact, the Everydayer Club is the best way to go about doing that, because you get access to the members-only Discord. That's where you can interact with hosts like myself and get the show ad-free, so it saves you a little bit of time as well. Head to lockedonflames.supercast.com and find out more. For those of you on video, we send you now to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, please make sure your second listen is NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. I am Ryan G. Thanks for having fun with us. We'll talk to you again on Thursday for more Locked On Flames.